Hello and welcome to the Dream Stream. This is Paul Sheldon, the Dreamer-in-Chief of Dreamosophy.com. Sometimes I like to be called a Dream Ambassador. I'm an ambassador from the world of your dreams for the future. And today we're going to be talking about the art of fundraising. And our topic for this first day is a fundamental shift, which I'll talk more about in a little while. And we get to meet every morning this week for an hour. And those of you who have a little bit of extra time who'd like to sign up for our VIP sessions, they'll start at the conclusion of that hour. And we are not going to start the group VIP sessions today. We're going to start them tomorrow. And those of you who have signed up for the VIP sessions, I will schedule a special session with you as my way of apologizing for starting a day later than we had planned. Each of you is going to get at least half an hour with me privately to explore how to raise the money to help you realize your fondest dreams for the future. I'd like to start today by inviting each of you who is here to share a little bit about who you are, what is your dream for the future, and what is your favorite flower? And you can just kind of unmute yourself and start talking, or I can call on people, but let's just see who's eager to share.
So my dream for the future is, I'm Mara McLaughlin. My business is IRL Social Skills. We teach autistic and other socially struggling teens, young adults, and their parents how to initiate, cultivate, and sustain relationships. And my dream for the future is that this business scales so that it meets the dire need and the dearth of services for these these deserving individuals, thereby closing the workforce gap and serving individuals in a way that actually works.
Wow, that's awesome, Mara. Thank you.
Oh, my favorite flower is Lily of the Valley.
Thank you. I've come the last few years to wonder if I'm a high-functioning autistic. When I look back at my childhood and I think about some of the ways that I was obsessed with certain things and struggled with things like empathy. And when I get stressed, I hit my head. It's been really interesting to me to consider maybe I'm not normal. Or maybe there is no normal. You know, there's wonderful language emerging around neurotypical and neurodiverse. And maybe part of why I've struggled so much in my life is I'm actually neurodiverse and I don't fit the common mold. So maybe you and I can talk at another time about that.
Cool.
Well, I guess I'll go, Paul. And as you, I believe, know, right now my future goal is actually fairly close to happening right now, and that's raising money for our ASAP group. I don't know, probably the rest of the group doesn't know what I'm talking about there, but it's Ashland's Fiatahurst Aid Project that Paul has gotten himself involved in, and I'm the president of the group that is trying to raise some money to help rebuild the infrastructure that was lost in Ukraine in the town of Sviatahursk. And we've established a sister city relationship between Ashland and Sviatahursk, and we're currently in the process of trying to figure out how we can raise money to provide some needed infrastructure for them. And so that's my goal for the future, is to make a difference there. And you know, I think my favorite flower is a love-hate relationship with a rose. That my mother had a lot of them, and when I was a kid, it would oftentimes interfere with our football games that were played in the front yard, and we'd ending up into the rose bushes, and that caused a lot of problems, both for the person who landed in them and for me, because my mother didn't approve of them, but oftentimes loved them and thought they were beautiful.
Lovely. My sister and I used to love to play softball and kickball in our front yard in Southern California. 65 plus years ago, and my mother had a bed of chrysanthemums on the side of the yard. And we had a special out of bounds call that was mummy flowers. If the ball went into the mummy flowers, then everything stopped. We had to go rescue the flowers first. Rose is lovely. Thank you. Someone else?
I'll go. So my name is Lillian Taylor, and my company, or I should say our company, is the Blooming Zinnies Media Corporation. We are embarking on the creation of media for children to help them to build emotional muscle so that when they encounter trauma in their lives, they're not going to be, excuse me, they're not going to be waylaid by it and wind up with mental illness. So we're gently introducing them to situations that are similar to what they might encounter and providing them with demonstrative ideas of best practices using 3D animation and allowing them to actually enter into the scene through an augmented reality world so that they can more viscerally experience what the other characters are experiencing. Because gamification, it seems, augments learning by a factor of 6.
Wow.
So
wow.
That's my passion.
Yeah.
And
can you say the name of the company again?
Oddly enough, Blooming Zinnies. And so some of our characters are ambulatory flowers. And so you're asking me to choose from my family, my favorites in the family. I don't know. Maybe Julia, who is, I don't know what she is. She's a tulip. Yeah, tulip. And she wears a sombrero and has a beard.
Wow, interesting character. One of my favorite songs is from Dubrovnik in Croatia. And it's Tulipan Jorgovan Tosus Vita Dva. And it's a song about tulips.
Oh, cool. I have to learn that.
Lovely. Oh, yeah, I'll send it to you.
Cool.
Arlene, Mark, the race is on.
Okay, I'll go. So Arlene Price, my favorite flowers is actually tulips and calla lilies. I love calla lilies. So when she was talking about tulips, I love tulips because I love the various colors that you can get in the tulips. So my passion is actually educating and helping people, especially women, helping them to become self-employed. And also realizing the value of home ownership. So building a legacy and equity in home ownership.
And you helped me do that.
I help you do that several times. I enjoy helping people do that. And so now what I'm helping people do, especially investors, and so listen to this, so it wasn't necessarily a plug, but it's been really huge, is that I have investment programs. We go up to $10 million line of credit. And you can actually buy one of these properties, and they just look at your credit score and your assets. You don't need tax returns. You don't need pay stub, nothing like that. Yes.
Oh,
so it's great for people who are buying property, want to fix it and flip it, or you want to fix it and hold. So it's an awesome program.
And
so I've been doing a lot of seminars with that.
Let me just say for the record here, commercial announcements are welcome in the art of fundraising. We're all raising money for something, and whatever it is, it's okay for you to take a minute to share with people what you're doing. I'm an old sales trainer, and if you're not enthusiastic about what you have to offer, then we need to talk, because this is a place where it's okay to be promoting something.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be in Chicago. It could be all over.
Oh, that's nice to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
In Colorado? Anything in Colorado?
Oh, absolutely. You find the property, we get you approved for it. We give you the rehab loan if you need rehab loan. Close it out.
That's part of my formula.
Arlene helped me with the property in Chicago that we bought for $200,000 with a $200,000 construction loan, and then we sold it for $625,000. I love deals like that.
Yeah,
Yes, so.
indeed. Well, I have a lot of those things going on. Property would be a part of it. I actually have a almost 60-year history of creating businesses the way people would paint paintings and giving them to the world. And sometimes they make money, and usually they don't, but that wasn't the reason that they existed. And at the moment, we kind of have an interesting situation. I'm in the Grand Canyon. I'm here for another year or a year and a half. As a chef, I spent 50 years putting 4 of my favorite ingredients together in one form or another to make food taste better. And I finally created a product called Spog that has those ingredients in it. It's going national. And we have a nonprofit component, a for-profit component. Spog is going to be our mothership, is going to bring in the dollars that'll fuel everything else we want to be able to do. We want to bring people healthy food, organic food, get them to stop using, believe it or not, there's less salt in here than you would think because of the way I formulate it. So, but people always think of salt first, but they put it on everything. So we came up with something that could be used for fundraising, could be used for just basically educating people about eating a little bit better when they go to reach for something off the shelf. And there's actually a whole culture that goes underneath those 4 ingredients too. And I'm kind of building a whole ecosystem around it. So I'm looking for fundraising for that. I'm looking for the right people to work with to make it happen.
And your favorite flower?
Well, I guess really my favorite flower would have to be daffodil because it's on my wife's back.
Oh.
And I've been looking at it for 32 years. So if I have a favorite, it would have to be that because that's her. Although her favorite flower is one that only lasts for a couple of weeks a year, the irises. We used to have this beautiful 100-year-old Victorian house in Colorado. And I built a big white fence all the way around, a white picket fence, and we had her irises all around, and it was very nice. Then we moved to Santa Fe. Well,
Are you open to sending a sample of your seasoning so they can replace the salt? And I ask for that because I have a lot of people that are around me that are diabetics and have high blood pressure, and they are a huge fan of cooking and preparing meals. And so if I can sample that, I definitely have some customers that will be willing to purchase some of that because they definitely need that. Because it's all about taste. So
yeah, it is. And we've spent a lot of time sampling natural product from all over the country. The answer is yes. And in fact, I've got something on my website that's going up right now where people like yourself can grab a sample and send it to somebody. And in fact, if you find a channel where people are buying, for instance, I've got a lot of small people who live all over the country that know some small independent grocers. If they get some product in, then they'll just get a check every month just for introducing it. You know, my whole thing is I worked with Amway. I worked with all the multi-level marketing people. And the reality is that you can cut that cheese any way you want to, but you need to give it back to people. You don't get to put it all in your pocket. And I want to make sure, for instance, that as we're growing our business and doing organic foods, that we're actually empowering small farmers across the country too. I want the money to go back in their pocket. They're the ones that are working hard.
Sounds good.
And I have one more question for each of you to share. And thank you, Mark, for your courage and your vision and what you're doing. It's
crazy.
I've been tracking each other for quite some time now.
Yeah.
So my one more question is, if you had a question that you'd like to get answered this week, what's your question? And you can either share it out loud or put it in the chat.
Well, how to have a nonprofit branch of my LLC for scholarships.
We will definitely talk about that.
Right.
And you'll notice that in the art of fundraising with Dreamosophy's approach, we do not distinguish between not-for-profit, for-profit, co-op, different benefit corporations, B Corps, what it is that you're raising money for yourself. It's a very similar process, not surprisingly. Someone else, what's your overarching question? Go ahead, Lillian.
So I guess my fundamental question is, how do I bridge that gap between needing to be full-time in my pre-revenue business so that I qualify for funding and, you know, letting go of my bread and butter?
Yeah, and you phrased it properly, the gap between your vision of what's possible and then the circumstances of what's pragmatic and what you need to be responsible about. I remember when I was studying Taoism 35 years ago, I said to my Taoist teacher, who had written a lot about Taoist non-interference, you know, not bothering other people by trying to interfere with their development. And I said to him, you know, Taoist non-interference sounds to me a little like not getting out of bed in the morning. Like, if I'm really not going to interfere with anybody else's life and growth and development, how do I make a living? And he just looked at me and said, come on, Paul, you have to work. He didn't even want to engage in that dialogue. It was kind of humbling. Welcome, Dr. Michelle Krause. Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
Your timing is perfect. We're just talking about 4 items, which I will put in the chat. What's your name? What's your dream for the future? What's your favorite flower? And if you had an overarching question that you'd like to get answered this week, what's your question? And you're the last one. So welcome to the hot seat.
What am I supposed to answer?
So what's your name? What's your dream for the future? Your favorite flower? And your overarching question. And can you tip your camera forward just a little bit? There we go, so we can see your whole face. Thank you.
And what was the last one?
The last one was your overarching question that you'd like to get answered this week as we discuss the art of fundraising.
I don't have one.
Just fine.
I mean, I do a great deal of fundraising. I just wanted to drop by because I promised.
Thank you. And one of your fondest dreams for the future?
Peace in the Middle East.
Lovely. Thank you.
That's my dream. We don't have World War III.
Yeah, that would be great. And we've also been joined by Arthur. Did you hear the prompts there, Arthur? I'm not sure your sound is on yet.
And forgive me, Paul, I'm waiting for a phone call. And that's why I was late.
I will not be offended if you mute out or drop off and come back.
Thank you.
No need to say anything. You're welcome to come and go as you choose. Arthur, have you got sound working yet? You have cat working, clearly. All right, no sound from Arthur yet. I'm going to share my screen here because our topic today is a fundamental shift. Let's see if I can do this smoothly. Each day we're going to cover a theme, and Dreamosophy is a unique process for dreaming up a life worth giving. We're particularly sensitive to the realization of fond, worthwhile, altruistic dreams. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I got to this position. In 1970, I was living in Southern California, and my sister got involved with a group that planted trees. We were trying to save the forest from the smog. And we found that when we went around and told people that smog is killing children, they went, oh yeah, we know. But when we told them that smog is killing the forest, they got all very concerned and said, oh, what can we do about it? And our goal was to end smog in Los Angeles by 1995. We failed. But along the way, we planted 2 million trees with the help of a lot of people. And the tree people are still there in the park that my older sister Hunter and I helped them create, Coldwater Canyon Environmental Education and Participation Center. It's just called the Tree People now. And they're still teaching people about the value of trees. And at the time in 1970, nobody knew how to raise the money and nobody wanted to raise the money. And my very first job while I was still in college in that regard was to get tools and food for the people who were up in the forest planting trees. And I would go around to hardware stores and supermarkets and ask them for donations to support the tree planting work. That led me to a course at UCLA called The Art of Fundraising that was taught by Irving R. Warner, who wrote the book, The Art of Fundraising. And it's from Irving's work. I worked with Irving for several years as his assistant, and it's from that work that the approach that Dreamosophy presents emerged. And so you're going to be hearing a lot about Irving Warner and the 7 questions approach to fundraising that I learned from him over the next 5 days. It became interesting to me that in many of the organizations that I work with, nobody knows how to raise the money or nobody wants to raise the money. It's people like Michelle or very strange, like me, who say, oh yeah, I can raise money. Most people don't say that. And so over the years, I've been the one to whom the task of raising the money falls. And in the 1980s, my sister and my mother and my sister's former husband, Amory Lovins, and I sat around the table talking about how do we save the world? How do we make the world a place that's functional? And Amory was particularly concerned about a number of topics: energy, because energy links to weapons, and water, because water is easier to understand than energy, and arable land, because all over the world, arable land is in jeopardy, and national defense, because all those things link to national defense. And then what are the links among those: energy, water, arable land, national defense? How do they connect up? So we started the Rocky Mountain Institute as a think and do tank, and Jimmy Carter was very impressed. Bill Clinton referred to their book, The Natural Capitalism, as this next industrial revolution. And RMI, once again, is still there. They've moved from Old Snowmass down into Boulder, but they're still doing things like redesigning the Empire State Building to make it more energy efficient, and commenting on what would it be like if we derived our energy from something other than fossil and nuclear fuels. More recently, I got involved in prison reform. I was dared by a horseshoer in Colorado to create green jobs training for people who are incarcerated, because at the time, Hunter and I were working with Walmart to create green jobs at Walmart. which is a whole other conversation. We had a difficult time talking with them about human resources and human value, but they were big on wind turbines and natural light and solar energy. So we were working on that. And this man in Colorado said, you know, people who've been in prison are not going to get green jobs. And if you really think green jobs are important, you will offer green jobs training to people who are in prisons. And so I spent a few years raising money to start green jobs training programs in prisons. We weren't successful in getting prisons to sponsor those programs, but it was interesting that we were successful in getting the American Correctional Association interested in the opportunities to save money in correctional facilities by implementing sustainability-oriented practices like recycling and gardening and job training that's related to the new green economy. And along the way, I met a group in Oakland called Planting Justice, which employs formerly incarcerated people to convert lawns to food gardens and to do food justice education in the schools in Oakland, California. And I mentioned Planting Justice because they have just received their first $5 million pledge from an individual, not from a foundation or a government agency. The wife of the founder of Netflix just sent them a check for $2.5 million. And so Planting Justice is a great story, which you'll be hearing more about this week. And they work both inside prisons and out in the neighborhoods in Oakland to reach into for people who are incarcerated and then develop relationships with them after they're released so that they can become contributing members of their communities and use gardening and nurseries and food not only as a practical skill, but also as a metaphor for cultivating a more nourishing way of life. Because of the work in prisons, I've been called on a lot recently to work with prison reform. And so one of the people I met through the American Correctional Association is named Brian Kane. He's the former director of security for the Corrections Corporation of America. And some of you may recognize that as the big bad prison industrial complex. And Brian, partly out of his relationship with me at the American Correctional Association's Clean and Green Committee that we started, began to question the morality of private prisons. And he said, if we're going to do private prisons, they should be as nonprofit entities, not for profit. It's immoral to derive profit from incarcerating human beings. And he went to the Corrections Corporation of America and basically proposed this idea that they should start a nonprofit arm to do altruistic operation of correctional facilities aimed at not producing profit, but reducing recidivism and helping people develop productive lives so that they don't come back to prison after they're released. CCA basically said, that's a great idea. Somebody ought to do it. You're fired. And so Brian went out and started Social Profit Corrections as a nonprofit group to transform the relationship that prisons have with agencies that can't, for one reason or another, provide incarceration facilities fast enough and have to contract with outside entities. Social Profit Corrections is working to develop relationships with the people who need incarceration quickly, but are willing to do it on a not-for-profit basis rather than a for-profit basis. And I sit on his advisory board, and it's very fun to listen to how that's developing. They also have just received a $2 million grant from an individual. And so we'll talk more about how that happens. And then one of my favorite fundraising activities over the last 15 years, 20 years really, has been working with Laura X. And I have a particular affinity for creative dreamers, people who are dreaming up a world worth giving, a world that's safer and healthier for everyone to live in. And Laura X is the woman who accomplished the removal of the exemptions in the rape laws that allowed husbands to rape their wives. When she started out in 1969 in 46 states in the United States, there were exemptions in the rape laws that excluded husbands from the definition of rape. And she didn't think that was right. And along the way, her friend Susan Brown Miller coined the phrase date rape. And Joe Biden credits Laura's work with his National Violence Against Women Act that protects women from violence in many contexts. And Laura is 82 now, so she'll turn 83 in about 3 weeks, and still working. She is a committed activist. She is very dedicated to having the work that she's done with 22 different social movements preserved as an archival form in various university and public libraries to make it accessible to a younger generation that doesn't understand that they're standing on the shoulders of women who worked tirelessly in 3 waves of feminism to grant women the dignity that they deserve, dating back to the time of sacred groves and women as the healers and keepers of sacred wisdom. Laura is an example of someone who is just altruistically dedicated to her work, has never really thought about money. We were able to raise, I think, $4 million to support the preservation of her legacy in various forms. And I pride myself on having helped her and supported her in realizing her vision, because it's what mattered to her, to the exclusion of family and friends and even herself and her own sustenance. She just wanted to do her work. And so that's another example that I'll share more about as we go on this week. And what I'm really talking about here is a fundamental shift in how you view fundraising. Many people think about fundraising as getting people to give money to something that they wouldn't otherwise do. It's kind of like sales, persuading people to do something that they might not otherwise do, and particularly asking for money. The very basis of getting someone to give money has shifted in the last 20 years to which, in a way such that the word ask is not a verb anymore. It's a noun. You get to the ask. You do the ask. And we don't take that approach in Dreamosophy. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. But in particular, what we ask are questions rather than asking for money. We ask people about what they care about. And we recommend that the process of the art of fundraising is a process of cultivating relationship, cultivating relatedness with people who may share the value of what you're proposing, who may be excited about what you're doing and may offer to help if they discover how exciting what you're doing is. So I want to just expound for a moment on this notion of a fundamental shift, because in assumptions about the nature of the world, we make assumptions about what's true and what has to happen and how things work. One of my favorite examples is dentistry. If you think back 150 years ago, if you had a toothache, you would be likely to go to the stable where they have pliers to pull out your tooth, or to a barber that has that red and white spiraled barber pole out front, who could pull out your tooth for you. And that was what people did with sore tooths. Over the last 150 years, we've developed an approach called dentistry, where people are taught to take care of their teeth so that their teeth last a lifetime. And that was a fundamental shift in how we related to our own teeth. Another example is germs. Once again, 150, 200 years ago, surgeons didn't wash their hands, and people didn't know anything about germs. They knew about evil spirits, they knew about demons, they knew about being possessed by evil spirits. And there are many philosophies from 150 and 200 years ago about what makes people sick. Consumption was the word for tuberculosis, and it was believed that it came from unrequited love. Being consumed by unrequited love would cause people to lose their respiratory function and lead to oftentimes death. And people didn't know how to treat consumption. They thought that you needed to surrender your unrequited love and practice other different approaches, but they didn't know anything about germs. And then along came Pasteur and other scientists who discovered that there are these microscopic entities that you can't even see that correlate to the presence of many different kinds of disease. And so over the last 150 years, surgeons have started washing their hands, and people have begun to practice public health and hygiene in ways to prevent disease and support health around the knowledge of these things that we can't see, called germs or bacteria or viruses. Now, we're not going to get into a long debate about whether or not which viruses cause disease, but I just wanted to point out that there's a fundamental shift that happens when you understand something like germs, and your worldview shifts. With regard to fundraising, I'm going to recommend to you this week that you consider a fundamental shift in how you hold the art of fundraising. And the fundamental shift is this, and before I tell you what it is, I'm just going to talk a little bit about how fundamental shifts happen. Once you recognize something like gravity, or that the Earth orbits around the sun, you'll go, oh yeah, that was obvious, duh, or I knew that, or yeah, that makes sense to me. So the fundamental shift that I'm suggesting is be interested, not interesting. I'll say it again, be interested, not interesting. And this is something that I first heard from Jim Rohn, who's a wonderful motivational speaker and goal-setting person. And it really shifted my worldview to consider, what would it be like if instead of practicing my elevator pitch and learning how to present my case and learning how to persuade people to do what I want them to do, I just slowed down for a minute and got interested in what they care about. One sales trainer once said to me, this starts with facting. I said, facting? He said, yeah, have you ever seen how 2-year-olds point? 2-year-olds will point, and they look not at what they're pointing at, they look at you. If you watch 2-year-olds, they point and they'll go, but they're looking at your face while they're pointing to see if they made you look. Facting, you walk into somebody's house or office or go for a walk in the park with them, and if you just go, what is that? You can be pointing at a painting or a piece of statuary or an award or a piece of landscape or whatever it is you're pointing at, and you invite people to talk about what's in their environment. Almost always comes with a story. Almost always people have in their environment things that interest them, that embody and represent what they care about. And so the process of being interested leads to the 7 questions that we'll be talking about later in the week. And that is, what we're developing here is a relationship with someone who cares, who has things that they care about. Tracy Gary, the author of Inspired Philanthropies, refers to this as honored obligations. People, even very wealthy people who are philanthropically inclined or venture capital investors who have access to capital, have already invested in things that they care about. And so the person who's walking around trying to invest money in something new, they're pretty rare. Most people are already committed in ways that are to the limits of their ability because they care. And so it's very important, rather than trying to get someone to do something, to find out what do they care about and what are they already invested in. So I'm going to slow down for a minute here. We're just going to go for about another 10 minutes today and stop at about 5 minutes to the hour. But how is this impacting you? I've said a lot. I've been talking for a long time. And welcome, Kathleen, by the way. Thank you for joining us. We're entering into a conversation that's going to last for 5 hours this week. So how has what I've said so far impacted you? Or as Bob Dunham would say, what is this provoking in you? And you can just unmute yourself and start talking.
Well, for me, it's provoking excitement and hope. Yeah.
Say more about that.
I'm very impressed by your track record and by the resources that you've already brought to us and the examples, and so that has me lit up.
Cool. Thanks, Mara.
What has provoked me listening to you, and it's so funny that you brought that back up today, because I was watching a segment yesterday with Van Jones, and he talked about he got $100 million from Jeff Bezos to help reform the prison system, but he wanted him to do something on the lines of educating them and providing them mentorship and an outlet that will help them get to the next level in their life, and not just making money off of them, but something on the lines of nonprofit, where once he puts something in place, and he has 10 years he has to do this. Once he puts something in place, that he has to use these funds up, that these people will not return back to the prisons. And just listening to that and him trying to come up with various ways to assist in something like that just brings a lot to mind. The other thing was about the trees, the planting of the trees. And it's so funny because my brother Anthony sent me over the weekend about 10 different trees that he's planting, because he's back with Planting Justice. And I said, oh, send me, let me see those trees that you're planting. And he just showed me the little small baby trees that are planting. And they're planting trees to start helping people to start growing their own foods and stuff. But people don't realize the value of the planting the trees and getting started. Is like you got to start at grassroots. And I said I should probably plant a tree in honor of my brother who passed not long ago, and just saying I need to do some research and see what fruit trees, and these are fruit trees that he's planting, what fruit trees will actually live here in Chicago, Illinois. So just listening to things of that nature, I just think that information I could actually bring it to a number of people to assist in a lot of different ways, but just don't quite know when and where. And I've also, like, twice a year, I've gathered like toiletries and stuff to give to this rehab center that we have here in Chicago for those people who are from substance abuse and they have children that's been a part of that and all of that I collected from my realtors and industry partners, lotion, Pampers, toothpaste, toothbrush, soaps, and all of that I've given back. But I put it together in basket forms and given back. So yeah, just finding out what people are interested in, because there's so much need out here. And just being able to identify what your passion is and what people are interested in. And people, if they're interested in that, they will give. They will support you in some form or another.
And Arlene, if you don't mind my singling you out, Arlene is a wonderful example of this quality of being interested, not interesting. But she also is self-disclosive about the things that matter to her. She discloses to people what she's engaged in. And one of the first interactions we had, she was talking about how excited she was about sending shoes to Haiti. And she was sending these barrels of shoes to Haiti. And I don't remember, was it $100 for a barrel or was it $250?
Yeah, so it was $150 or $200 for a barrel. And I was just collecting gently used shoes and stuff. Yeah.
So excited about that. I said, how do I do that? I want to help. She didn't say, I want you to give me $100 or $150 or $200 to send a barrel of shoes to Haiti. She said, this is what I'm doing. And I said, that is great. I want to do that too. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
A couple of people have asked about the recording. I'm going to put a link in the chat to our LinkedIn group, and let me put it up on the screen here. There are two resources that I would love for you all to know about. One is our LinkedIn group, which you'll receive emails and text messages about how to set up how to join the LinkedIn group where we're going to post the videos each day. I'm not always on time in posting the videos. I'll confess to you, you'll get an announcement that says the videos are up, and they actually aren't. So if you get the videos announcement and the videos aren't up yet, be patient. They'll be up within an hour or two. And then also our VIP group, which is starting tomorrow, an opportunity to spend an extra hour with me on this same Zoom link where it's less structured. You can ask your questions and call on me and push me to make sure that you get what you want this week. And there's a $97 charge for the VIP group, which it covers the 4 hours that we'll spend together and also a private call with me. And once again, you will get invitations to join the LinkedIn group and to join the VIP group via email and text message this week. So before we break up for the day, does anybody have a specific question? And by the way, welcome, Kathleen. If we have a moment here, I'll ask you to introduce yourself. But does anybody have a specific question before we part for the day? Hearing none, Kathleen, we started out the day today with a series of prompts, which are, what's your name? What's your dream for the future? What's your favorite flower? And what's your overarching question that you'd like to get answered this week?
Hi there, I'm Kathleen Sands, and I am a volunteer for Natural Capitalism Solutions, Miss Hunter Lovins, your dear sister. And
a force of nature.
For sure. She's my hero.
Mine too.
So we need to, she's doing big work, big global work that needs a lot.
It's not that bad. She's just trying to end climate change, right?
Yes.
And redefine value and redefine capitalism. Just small little tasks that we all have on our to-do list.
Quite literally trying to save the planet. And she wants to do some grassroots work that will really get the governments and corporations to do what they need to do in the time frame needed, because it's not happening fast enough. And global climate experts like her are worried. And so that's what the work that we're doing here, and it's going to need a lot of funding. So it hasn't been my forte, but I'm the one here that is trying to do that. So I need to learn and bring some funds in. And so how to do that, it's pretty general at this stage. Specific questions will come up and do come up, but at this stage, it's really just generally how. But it's, I'm hearing a theme. My thing is I find resources. Anybody that's like a fundraiser, I'll go, oh, give me a golden nugget, tell me what's your big secret. And I've actually taken a guy to lunch and I've talked to another person, and the message, it seems to be consistent in that listening, like in sales, is quite important.
Yes,
and the guy that I took to lunch told me, some stories about big names, big billionaires that he's worked with. And he said, I sat there for 45 minutes listening to what their story, and one of them was a fishing story or something. Just listened for 45 minutes about his fishing story. Then the meeting time was over. They were like, you've got other meetings. He's like, yeah, put them off. I'm talking right now. The last 10 minutes, he said, well, what is it that you want? And they were like, $50,000 or whatever it was. And he's like, okay, I'll give you 25,000 right now. And next year we'll give you another 25,000 for, and then he basically, said, what's your project? Listening.
Thank you.
And being
Absolutely.
interested in what they're talking about.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about that this week. Mar, did you start to raise your hand there a minute ago? Okay. Well, thank you all.
If I could say one more thing, if I could get a recording, can I get a recording today?
In the LinkedIn group, and I can send you the links if that's not convenient for you.
Thanks so much.
And what's your favorite flower?
Do I have a favorite? I love Cosmos.
There we go. Perfect time of year for Cosmos too. All right, I'm going to leave you with a song. It's so easy to dream of the days gone by, so hard to think of the times to come, and the grace to accept every moment as a gift is a gift that is given to some. What will you do with your days but work and hope, Let your dreams bind your work to your play. What can you do with each moment of your life but love till you've loved it away? Love till you've loved it away. Thanks very much for joining us today. Same time, same place tomorrow. See you soon.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.